What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Today, Bitcoin is sitting at $55,300 and finding a little bounce over the weekend. So, is this the bottom? Are we going to see Bitcoin go higher? And we have the SPY finding a little bit of a bounce here this morning, sitting at 545, as well as the Qs at 452. So today I wanted to discuss are we going to see these markets continue to rally, and are we going to see an increase in inflation moving forward? Plus, I want to discuss another chart that shows the cycles and history of stock market and also things such as real estate. I think it is really insightful. It shows patterns that were discovered a long time ago, way back in 1875. So I'll share that with you. Plus, I want to discuss, are we going to see a 50 point or 25 point uh, rate cut in September? And is the stock market going to continue to rally, or have we topped? If that sounds good to you, you know what to do. Be sure to hit the like button and be sure to subscribe if you want to see more. And let's get into the video. All right, guys. First off, I want to discuss some stocks here. We have the semiconductor ETF SMH moving up slightly today, and it looks like we may have just put in a higher low on semis. We know that this market has been led by the semiconductors and the Magnificent Seven. So that is something to keep in mind. However, we have fallen below the 382 off this bigger move overall. So there is the possibility that we go lower, but however, I do think that we may have put in a higher low for now, and we could potentially go up and retest these all-time highs. I do think that's a possibility. As I've been mentioning on this channel, I thought we were coming for a gap fill here on the SPY and the S&P 500. We got that first gap fill for the S&P, so we are seeing a little bounce here, and we may move higher. However, we still have that gap fill lower at 534 on the SPY. If we go over to the Qs, you can see what we had been discussing here is the possibility of these gap fills. We closed the first gap fill, and now we have closed the second gap fill. So now coming perfectly back to the 618. Look at that. 618 works like a charm, and we are seeing a bounce here. So we could start to see these markets go higher into the rate cuts coming up here in September. Um, it was thought that we would see a 25 point rate cut in September. However, fears last week on the stock market falling off um, sent this chances of a 50% or 50 point uh, basis rate cut up to nearly, I think, 45%. So, um, yeah, there was a lot of fear in the markets last week. That's for sure. We had several days straight down. So if we go back to the SPY, you can see here we've had 1, 2, 3, 4 days down last week. That was to start the week, and we are seeing a little bounce here. So there is the possibility that we do move higher, as I mentioned, and the possibility that we go back up and retest those all-time highs. But we will have to watch the price action. We'll get more into some of the cryptocurrencies later, but first I wanted to start off here with the stock market. This is the IWM, and that is sitting at 208. And I wanted to zoom out here. This is the daily chart to show you what we are seeing. We do have this upwards trend, and we have found support here at the 382, and Right now, it looks like we may be coming back down to potentially test that area one more time, but we are seeing a nice little bounce today on the small cap stocks and risk assets, such as many of the altcoins. So it looks like we may have found a, a bottom here temporarily for risk assets. So that is something to keep in mind, and we do have this take profit zone up here on the IWM around 228 to 231. And of course, if we can break above that, well, then I think we are going a lot higher. As we mentioned before here, we had a target of 243, and there is the possibility that the IWM goes much higher. So that's something to keep in mind. What other markets can we look at? Well, we have the HSI right now coming back down to retest our trend line. We mentioned this here ever since this broke out of this downward sloping trend several months ago. And since we broke out of that, came down and retest is when we saw that first big bounce earlier this year in May. That has come back down to retest that trend line now for the fourth time. So we could see a bounce here in some of these foreign markets, emerging markets. Uh, they look like they have started to put in a bottom and may potentially move higher. So a lot of the stocks like BABA and Tencent may do very well. I wanted to discuss this chart because I saw this chart this morning over on X. This was posted by 𝗗𝗶𝗀𝗶𝗺𝗶𝗺. So shout out to him for sharing this chart. And I wanted to discuss a couple things because I began investing and back in 1999. And that was when I was in high school when I first started making money. Of course, I went to college and then got a career after that, and then I began investing more in the stock market in my 401k at that time. And along the way, I flipped some houses and did some real estate deals. So this is kind of the things that I've learned over time, but I was never really able to put my finger on it until I was much older. I was around 40 when I first started really discovering these market cycles. And so I thought this is something very interesting to share with the younger generation and even older people who are not aware, because these cycles take a long time to play out. But this chart here, as you can see, was from 1875. And this is periods when to make money. So 𝗗𝗶𝗀𝗶𝗺 says period is to buy in 2023 and sell in 2026, and then again in 2032 and sell in 2035. But I wanted to point out a couple things here because those are the bigger trends. We can still make money in the meantime. So first off, we are here in 2024 right now, and you see that the markets tend to go up and peak in 2026 before seeing some sort of correction. So everyone keeps wondering if there is going to be a recession or correction. Well, I do think that is coming, but I don't think we see that until that period. And do we get something similar to the Great Depression? Well, maybe the period here after 2035 maybe seems more likely when we get that bigger panic in the market. A couple things I want to point out here is when these triangles at the top is the years in which panics have occurred and will occur again. And so you see here in 2019, this is when I left my corporate job, and I started noticing things that fall that indicated that I should be getting out of the market, and I positioned a large position in cash. I did not know that it was going to be COVID at that time, but once we got the dip, I realized that the markets were going to crash very quick, and I began buying. And I was able to do nearly a 4x return on ordinary stocks during that time. That was before I even really understood these higher risk assets. And now I see that they have even much better returns than that. And so that is why I create this content. But nevertheless, you do see these market cycles, and really, if you look at these, they tie in very similar to what we see in the stock market. B here is this line is the years of good times, high prices, and time to sell stocks and values of all kind. So again, we are going into that 2026 period. We do think that the markets will top here probably sometime in 2025. Um, that is the general thought process before we do see some sort of bigger correction. And then down here at the bottom, you have years of hard times, low prices, and a good time to buy stocks, corner lots, goods, etc., and hold till the boom reaches the years of good times, then unload. And this says, sure thing, save this card and watch it closely. And so I do agree, these things aren't always perfect. History doesn't always repeat, but it tends to rhyme. And so that's why I do believe we are going to see these markets continue to go up. We have gold sitting at 2,500 this morning. Cooling off here just a little bit the last couple days. I added one trend line to this chart. I saw this morning. We have this trend here of nearly all these perfect touches going up, and there is a possibility that we come back down towards this trend line or even lower. Of course, we can always go lower, but uh, nevertheless, this trend line does seem to be acting as support right now. I do think that we do see gold still go to 2,600 and possibly $3,000 in the coming years. And copper looks like it may be finding a little strength here. I also added in this trend line here on copper a couple days ago. We said if we broke out of this, we thought we may come back down to retest it. We have, and we are finding support there. Again, on the 618, or just below right now, as acting as a bit of resistance. But nevertheless, if copper breaks out of here, well, it could go much higher. A couple things about copper is we know that the economies have been slowing, which is leading to this downtrend, and copper is called Dr. Copper for a reason, because basically kind of indicates the health of the economies. And right now things have been slowing down, which is good for inflation. But nevertheless, Dr. Copper tends to lead the way, and we have put in a higher low here. So we may have seen a bottom on copper. That's a real possibility. I mean, of course, we could go lower, but if we do see copper start to continue to go up in the future, well, maybe that means if we go back to that chart on inflation, that we do start to see inflation start to tick up. And of course, this is what the Fed is really worried about, is have they done enough to bring inflation down and keep it under control? And they're really just trying to thread the needle here between the markets, the economy, and inflation. And so if we see something like this could go back to that period going into the 2030s potentially. Excuse me, guys. Where we do see that spike up. Of course, really, this could be the continuation with the rest of the market in this cycle, as I think about it a little bit more. But nevertheless, we could see inflation continue to go up, so we could see all these asset prices continue to go higher. If you are interested in buying stocks, commodities, or crypto, you can do so with Robinhood. Right now, Robinhood offers a 1% boost and 8 times the national savings rate. They allow you to begin building your portfolio with just as little as $1, and they allow you to invest in stocks, options, and ETFs. and trade commission free. If you're interested, there is a link below. Plus, they offer cryptos such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, and gold. Excuse me, guys. I'm going to take one little drink here. Got a little tickle in my throat, and it just does not seem to want to go away. Nevertheless, let's get into Bitcoin and what is going on. So we have put in a higher low here after this dip that we saw back with the carry trade unwind. We mentioned we may possibly come back down to this $51,000 to $52,000 range. And it looks like we did do that over the weekend. Could we go lower? There is a possibility that we still come back down here and retest that area maybe one more time. Nevertheless, the heart line here on our upward sloping parallel channel is acting as support right now. And if we can go back up and break through this $58,000 to $60,000 range, well, I think you are going to see Bitcoin go much higher. I do think that happens. What I think may potentially happen here is we do see a bounce here potentially for the next week or so going into the rate cuts. And we know that when the rate cuts first happen, generally the market kind of gets scared again. So we may see one more dip later in September before moving higher. So that's something to keep in mind on Bitcoin. But if we go over to the heat liquidation map, well, we see that we have this liquidity sitting up here around $58,000 for Bitcoin, and then some a little higher, 58.7. This is on the weekly chart, so there is the possibility that we go up and sweep this area this week. But I wanted to zoom out here to the 3-month chart because there is something here I wanted to point out. And as I've mentioned here before, we have nearly $1.7 billion in liquidity sitting at $70,300. So this is indicating that Bitcoin could go back up and retest and break through those all-time highs here in the coming weeks and months. I do think that you probably see that later this year. I think that September, is typically one of the weakest months for Bitcoin, but we know that October, November, and December, particularly October, is the strongest month typically for Bitcoin, and Q4 is the best quarter. So we could go much higher for Bitcoin. And I saw another post I wanted to share here from X from Mike Alford. Saylor stopped by CNBC since he was in the greater New York area. He bought $8 billion of Bitcoin since embarking on the Bitcoin strategy in 2020, and MSTR is up 840 cents, beating every single company in the S&P 500, including NVIDIA. So that's something to consider when you're thinking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. We have the Bitcoin dominance here, and it fell out of our wedge pattern here. We've been mentioning this before. We mentioned if we started to lose this, this is the Bitcoin dominance, so it shows the strength and returns of Bitcoin relative to the other altcoins. As this is going up, that means Bitcoin is increasing in value faster than the altcoins. But when this starts to go down, then we know that the altcoins outperform, and we have broken out of that chart again here. So if that continues to move down, we will see these altcoins continue to move up. We've mentioned this zone here for a long time, around 58 to 60% we thought we might see the dominance go to before rejecting from that area. And we have the total 3 market cap. So I will put the diagrams or my drawings back on this chart. And this is the chart from the thumbnail. And what I wanted to point out here is we kind of are starting to see this potential little inverse head and shoulders play out for the altcoins, which means we could go back up and retest those all-time highs here in the coming days and weeks. Of course, Bitcoin will have to move up first, but if you look at the similarities of this chart, from what we saw here from the bottom back in October of 23, before we had that big rally into the beginning of 2024, before pulling back. It's very similar to what we saw back in December of 2020, before altcoin season really started to take off. But you could see here that we rallied up and then pulled back. And I just wanted to take a little measurement on this because I just wanted to do this for fun this morning. So you see here, altcoins pulled back about 60% before moving higher in 2021. And if we take a measurement here, well, we've moved back about 40%. So yes, potentially diminishing returns, but nevertheless, it does look like we may have bottomed here. And what I wanted to point out specifically is this series of lower highs and lower lows, and now putting in a higher low. So that is something to keep an eye on. And as you can see here, this did very similar. We dropped down, putting in a series of higher or lower highs rather, and lower lows before finding a higher low, and then altcoins really took off back in 2021. So it looks like we are at those final periods of anyone that wants to get a spot position that missed out on the run back in the end of last year and the beginning of this year. I do think these altcoins do go much higher. Of course, that depends on what altcoins you're really looking at. Plus, we have the dollar breaking down and showing some signs of weakness. We are bouncing a bit here today, but we broke out of this wedge formation here a few weeks back now, actually back in July. Mentioned it back then. I did add this line here because we lost this trend as well. There is a possibility that we do bounce back up here a little bit before moving further down, but we know as the dollar moves down, these risk assets tend to do much better. And the dollar has shown a lot of weakness here over the past month or so. So it looks like the dollar wants to continue really moving down. Like I said, potentially we do see a bounce, but I do think the dollar may go below 100. There is a real possibility of that. And we could go back down and retest the bottom side of this upwards sloping parallel channel. So that's a real possibility here for the dollar. We have Solana setting at 134 and finding a little bounce here over the weekend and into today. So Solana is one of those altcoins that I do recommend because it has held up much better than several of these other altcoins. And I think Solana is going to kind of show the way. It does seem to be outperforming many of the others. And I do think it is really shown a lot of signs of resilience during this pullback while the whole markets have been pulling back, including Bitcoin. You see Solana has just continued to stay really within this range right here. And so I think that's very positive for Solana. I do think that it is going back up to retest potentially these all-time highs or recent all-time highs here very soon. And if we take a look at Chainlink, I think Chainlink is another one of those coins that have a real world use case by allowing all these different networks to continue to talk to one another. Chainlink sitting at 1057. Of course, I thought Chainlink would hold this area. We did lose that, but anytime these markets start to take off, Chainlink has looked really strong, particularly here more so in the recent months, even though we are putting in a series of lower highs. If we do break this downtrend and reclaim that area, well, I think Chainlink will do very well. There is a possibility we reject off this area, come back down one more time. But nevertheless, I do think that September is probably going to be our last chance to really get in on a lot of these altcoins before they begin moving. Another altcoin we can take a look at is AVE, ticker symbol AAVE, and this one has been looking really strong. This is a decentralized finance play. And like I said, really this one's held up a lot better than several of the others, as several of these other altcoins have sold off. You've seen this one really start to take off here in the past month. So I think that is very bullish. You want to take a look for some of these coins, altcoins that find strength early. When we start to see these markets turn, they are generally going to give you the best returns, um, because they will start getting the most attention and those narratives will play out. I think there's a few strong narratives in decentralized finance. I do think will come back, as well as gaming at some point. And of course, we have the real world assets that are coming out. I do think those are going to become a big deal as well. If you're interested in buying Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Chainlink, or Avalanche, Aave, and many more, you can do so with iTrust Capital. iTrust Capital allows you to buy, sell, and trade crypto, gold, and silver 24/7 in a low cost and no monthly fee tax advantage IRA. They have over 5,000 plus 5-star reviews. Plus, when you sign up, you can actually call and talk to people. That's what I like about iTrust. I use iTrust Capital, and there is a link down in the description below, and you can receive up to an additional $100 when you use the link below. All right, guys, it is Monday. I hope you all had a great weekend out there. Yeah, I'm back making videos. I got a little late start here on the video today. I typically try to get these out in the morning. I'm kind of taking a look and seeing if I could find a different way of recording these videos rather than doing live streams, so I can make the release times more consistent. I've played around with a couple different softwares, but I haven't really found anything that works uh, for me on that front yet. If there's anyone out there that knows anything about that, feel free to drop a comment below. Also, drop a comment below if there's any stocks, commodities, or cryptos you want me to take a look at, and I will review that here because my goal is to help you become better investors and traders. That's the reason I really started making this content. Uh, Initially, I thought about making more content around, financial advice as far as savings and stuff like that, but I found this to be much more interesting, and so that's why I am making this kind of content. Nevertheless, you can follow me over on X at Mind of Financier. I am Mind of the Financier on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So you can follow me there as well. But over here on X, I post anything that I see that has to do with stocks, commodities, and crypto. All right, guys, until next time, take care, be legendary, and peace out.